Every living thing has the power to decide whether to keep alive or kill. Using this power, strength is absolute. Imagine Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange in manga format. The brutality, the ultra-violence, the insanity, the depravity, and the pure chaotic energy. That is The World Is Mine. It is a manga that yanks you into the pits of hell, shows you the very worst of human society, and boldly offers a philosophical answer to today's modern-day woes. This may sound a bit strange, considering the two main characters, Toshi and Mon, are serial terrorists that, seemingly, kill without remorse. But before we broach these crucial philosophical themes, let's give a brief introduction to these two peculiar men. Mon is a primitive man living amongst a populace of civilized individuals. He therefore gives in to his innate urges, first and foremost. He kills spontaneously without any consideration of morality or law, and engages in sexual intercourse when his urges compel him to do so. Yet he doesn't possess the sort of malice or hatred of a modern-day psychopath. He simply imposes his animalistic will to power upon the world. How different are lightning, storm, and hail? Free powers without ethics. How happy, how strong they are. Pure will untrampled by the muddling influence of the intellect. In a society dominated by one's reliance for conscious reason, Mon stands in direct opposition. He is the Dionysian impulse that is often forgotten or disregarded. Toshi, Mon's natural foil, is an insecure, passive person who struggles breaking free out of his shell. He is blessed with superior intelligence, and is adept at constructing homemade explosives. Yet, he has no discernible connection with what Nietzsche called the divine animal, the natural unconscious guide. As such, he is a bungled mess of a man who is vengeful against the world, but lacks the conviction to do anything concrete about it. All that he lacks in terms of instinctual drives is embodied in Mon, hence the reason he is drawn to him like a moth to a flame. You must be ready to burn yourself in your own flame. How could you ever rise anew if you have not first become ashes? The problem, however, is that Toshi does not want to burn himself in this metaphorical flame, but to use it to burn the world down. Nietzsche's philosophy was built upon self-empowerment, unleashing the passions from within and to abandon societal norms to create a new value system. A value system that accentuates the talents and creativity of the higher men of society. Toshi, on the other hand, becomes disillusioned by society, forming a hatred that can only be quelled through violent outburst. He has no ambitions of recreating the dysfunctional aspects of society. Rather, he just wants to see it all burn down to the ground, hence the reason he creates a murder agency. Under this new age of terrorism, a colossal, ever-growing beast engages in its own rampage. This beast is dubbed Higumadon, and it is believed to be a giant brown bear. It murders anyone it comes into contact with, and it gives Mon the greatest scare of his life when he first comes into contact with it. In fact, after his first encounter with the Higumadon, Mon discovers that he's unable to kill people like he always had. The moral constraints that holds back society were now shackled onto Mon's metaphysical body. The beast, therefore, seems to represent the collective passions that have been shunned by the populace. The collective evil, that is. Higumadon thusly becomes a god, a force of nature that externalizes the energies from within. The collective energies of the populace, that is. Mon thusly has to undergo a transformational process similar to the one Nietzsche talked about in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. This metamorphosis is characterized via 3 stages. 1, the camel, 2, the lion, and 3, the child. The camel is a load-bearing animal that takes on many responsibilities, but never breaks free of the strictures of modern society. The lion, on the other hand, breaks the rules and dictates of society, the higher powers, by affirming itself. Even though that Mon acts like a savage animal, he has no bounds to the modern dictates of society. Therefore, he doesn't subscribe to any sort of belief or religion or governmental entity. He simply affirms himself. Eventually, though, the lion confronts the mighty dragon, the collective force that states, "Thou shalt." Now, this comes in many forms, usually in the form of religions, ideologies, or governments. Any organization that seeks to restrain one's abilities to think outside the box is ultimately an obstacle in achieving true freedom. Toshi wants to break free from society, but at the same time, he wants the acknowledgement of society. He wants to be noticed, he wants to be recognized, he wants to be remembered. And so, in this regard, he's contingent on society. Even though he's engaging in mass murder, he's still a slave to society itself. He is not affirming himself like a lion should. He's simply negating what society has offered him. Man, on the other hand, does affirm himself. And the reason that he can do this is that nothing in nature has value in and of itself. Notions of good and evil are human illusions that are used to comfort us. They are necessary in creating a balance with our fellow man, yet they also serve as chains to restrict our ability to think, and more importantly, our ability to act. Like animals, human beings are comprised of instincts that have served us well for tens of thousands of years. Instincts that are now dubbed evil and suppressed to maintain the status quo in society. Society therefore seeks to build its foundation upon rationality. But, as Nietzsche correctly pointed out, human beings are not purely rational beings. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Nietzsche believed that the greatest part of our spirits remains unconscious and unfelt. He thusly asserts that humans are not rational beings. The notion that we determine our actions from a standpoint of deliberate detachment is a Kantian fallacy. For the most part, human beings are not rational. We take action, and then we seek justification after the fact. Rarely is the inverse true. And this is certainly the case for Toshiman. In fact, much of their violence is done in a moment of haste. They're not seeking some grand ultimate goal like a Hollywood movie. They're simply bringing about terrorism and fear in the most inhumane way possible. And this, in fact, is the rub of The World Is Mine. It is not trying to make the characters likable. It is not trying to justify their actions. And it's trying to take the reader out of the process of justifying or negating their actions as well. It is presenting a situation where corruption is prevalent on both sides. No one's in the right, no one's in the wrong. We have to look beyond good and evil. And to do this, we have to acknowledge that the moral system that's being used in society is not advantageous for beings such as ourselves. Now, for clarity purposes, I'm not advocating for the actions of Toshiman, not in the least. The author is simply pointing out the conditions that lead to this sort of behavior, the conditions that leads to an apathetic society that looks at these events as mere spectacles to be watched on television. Certainly, the number of increased shootings in recent years makes one think, why are situations like this happening all over the United States, all over the world for that matter? Is it because society is configured in a way that allows for these things to happen? Is society restricting our freedoms? Is it creating situations in which our animalistic desires are burgeoning to the surface in the most vicious ways possible? And how can we ameliorate this? The answer that Man gives is very simple. Don't resist, accept. Everything is connected. Accept the fact that you have an animalistic side. Accept the fact that you have violence within you, aggressiveness, the need to speak your mind. While I don't want to make this video about politics in the least, I will say one thing. There's a reason that Jordan Peterson, Donald Trump, and Andrew Tate are becoming popular in the internet culture. That's because all three are breaking free from the dictates of society. We all kind of think that we're free in a sense, but there's degrees to freedom. We've all sort of put a limit on our speech, a limit on what we can say, and a limit on our own freedom. There's a reason why these three are catching on like wildfire, because they're allowing us to express more freedom than ever before. Again, I want to make this clear. There are certain things I like about all three of these men, and there are certain things I don't like about all three of these men. The point I'm trying to make is that people have a desire to be unrestrained. They have a desire to speak their mind. Or as Nietzsche said, anything which is living and not a dying body will have to be incarnate with the will to power. It will strive to grow, spread, seize, become predominant. Not from any morality or immorality, but because it is living and because life simply is the will to power. Exploitation belongs to the essence of what lives, as a basic organic function. It is a consequence of the will to power, which is, after all, the will to life. And so, remember how I was talking about Higumadon represents the internal fears and aggression and the evil of the human species itself? Well, that evil grows, as does Higumadon. And the more the people around this world suppress this quote-unquote evil, the bigger and more fearsome it becomes, to the point where it becomes a global threat. And instead of embracing this, instead of adopting the ideology of Man, i.e. don't resist, accept, everything is connected, humanity decides that they must destroy this evil. This becomes a war against itself. And a war against oneself is always a losing battle. Sure, you want to wrestle with your monsters, but you also want to integrate those monsters into your being. You want to accept that they are one and the same with you. Ignoring them and shunning them negates life itself. Nietzsche referred to this whole notion as asceticism, basically a self-denial process in which people take away certain aspects of their life to quote-unquote make themselves better. So for example, a priest might look at sex as a quote-unquote lower drive, and henceforth will abstain from it. But as we know, these energies dwell deep within the human body, and they cannot be denied. And they will rise up in insidious fashions in the future. And so to deny the passions and thereby embracing asceticism, a person embraces the notion of the will to nothingness. They elevate their metaphysical, spiritual body to a higher realm, but at the same time, they deny who they really are. Now, to be clear, asceticism in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing. If it's being used for a specific purpose, then it may have good ends. For example, if you want to be a UFC fighter, you're going to give up many indulgences so that you can get into the cage at the right weight. You're going to train very hard, you're going to eat a healthy diet, and you're going to abstain from many pleasures that normal people do on their daily basis. But by doing so, you will be stronger, faster, and more equipped to defeat your opponent. However, when one adopts asceticism as a lifestyle, as a means to attaining some illusory goal, then it's all in vain. For example, attaining an ascetic ideal of a perfect, morally just, good world is something that will rip us further away from our natural instincts. And The World Is Mine tries to tackle all these subjects. It tackles morality, asceticism, philosophy, psychology, power, politics, humanity, good versus evil, the very nature of the human being itself. And for this, it's a very powerful manga. A manga that is supplemented with great artwork, fascinating characters, and an engaging story. And there's even side characters that I didn't mention in this review that really bring different elements to the story as well. But I'll allow you to find all those hidden truths for yourself as you read The World Is Mine.